what would you say is this fast lane prone, burnout prone professional going to have as dysfunctional breathing habit, most likely?
100% overbreathing. Because an overdoer overdo the breath as well. So it's like that's a mindset. It's like fast, overdoing, overachieving, of course, overbreathing, like 100%. Because people who want to achieve more and who are overachievers eventually find a way to use their breathing to overachieve and overdo as well. Because to overachieve and overdo, we need extra energy. And where we can get that extra energy from is by our breath.
Nevşah, welcome to the Charlene Giselle Show. I am delighted to have this conversation with you today.
Me too. I wish we were face to face.
Indeed. Well, we are going to have to do a follow-up episode then so that we can do some deep breathing in person together.
Sure.
Nevşah, I would love for you to tell a little bit more about your background and your connection to breath science and all your expertise on the topic of breathing to our audience, please.
Yeah, of course. I'm a human behavior expert. My background is behavioral health sciences. I'm a teacher, speaking, bestseller author, and an entrepreneur. I have 20 plus years of expertise working with people on dysfunctional breathing and thinking habits, and I'm a recognized global authority in self-mastery area. I have helped over 40,000 people until now on using my methods, the methods I teach. I call them my 5 principles, and helped them to master all areas of life. I live in London with my family. And my vision for the future is having a graduate school of advanced sciences for self-mastery and training self-mastery teachers with the 5 principles I've been teaching to help millions of people transform their lives and live masterfully.
Thank you for sharing that. And perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about what are those 5 principles?
Sure. The first principles I have came up with is meditation, as most people already realize or know. I think learning classic way of meditation, not the techniques that are taught in the 21st century that are used by millions or apps that are used by millions, but real classic Vedic meditation, which is going on a journey of self-search, I would say, or going on a deep spiritual journey. And instead of trying to relax yourself, really sitting down with yourself 2 times a day, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, to just basically be with yourself. I think one of the most powerful techniques is classic Vedic meditation. The second principle is breathwork, analyzing dysfunctional breathing habits, because dysfunctional breathing habits, like we all have dysfunctional breathing habits, we all learn breathing habits, and some of those habits actually day to day, on a day-to-day basis, affect our health and well-being in a very bad way, and we don't realize it. Like you have headaches, anxiety, panic attack, you don't know why. Doctors say it's psychological, it's probably breathing related, because wrong breathing habits, dysfunctional breathing habits can cause over 200 symptoms. And these are well-known symptoms that are in respiratory science books. So these symptoms are well known, but nobody is actually going deep enough and analyzing breathing habits to help people breathe more functionally. So my purpose have been over the 20 years helping people understand the importance of dysfunctional breathing habits, and then leading people into unique breathing journeys, because when it comes to breath work, not one technique fits all. We all are breathing differently and we all need different breathing techniques. So a detailed breath analysis before starting breath work is a must, which most people are not aware of, because most people are just using techniques, but without knowing if that technique works for you or not. So analyzing breathing habits and then going on unique customized breathing journeys is the second principle I teach. And then the third is mind transformation, working with our judgments, working with our distorted perceptions, working on our automatic thoughts and automatic behavior, and also going beyond that and living a more conscious life, like getting conscious on our mind, getting conscious on how we think, working on our judgments, working on our biases, transforming those, and living life with a more objective mindset. I believe every person can, with strong mind transformation methods, can tap into the executive level of the mind, where they can gain the ability and capability of governing all areas of life. And I'm after that. Like, I'm after helping my students and my clients to gain control over their minds so that they can gain control over their world. Because unless you learn to govern your mind, you can't govern your life. But once you start governing your mind, you start governing your behaviors, your actions, the steps you take, you live a more conscious life, and then you get the exact results you want. And the fourth principle is aligning with purpose, because a purposeful life is a meaningful life. And over the years, I have been seeing, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher who certifies coaches. And over the years, I have realized that people right now in the 21st century are having a real problem with motivation. Motivation, trying to motivate ourselves, is a huge problem because of the conditioning we have in our minds, because of all the things we want to do, but we don't have time for. So it's really important for humans to dive deep, to understand ourselves with powerful questions, to understand our mission here, what our purpose is, who we are on the authentic level, who we really are, what are we here for, and why do we exist? So these are like evolved questions, but once you understand your purpose and why you are here, and once you align all your daily activities aligned with your purpose and your priorities and your values, then your whole life transforms and shifts, because then you start living life with inner inspiration instead of trying to do things with outer motivation. Right now, many people are trying to succeed, or trying to reach their goals, or trying to achieve the results they want with outside motivation, but those methods don't work on the long term. And there are reasons why people fail, which I would love to speak about today, because that's kind of like my expertise. And the true path to self-empowerment is learning how to align with life purpose. People fail because they're not ambitious enough, because they're not persistent enough, because they don't believe in themselves. Like, the reason why people fail, we know the reasons why people fail and don't achieve the results they want. But when it comes to how do we achieve those results, there's only one formula, and that is finding your purpose and living your life inspired from within. Because once you find your purpose and live your life from in to out, like from your inner purpose to, setting goals with that inner purpose, then you start being persistent, then you have integrity, then you have commitment, and you have discipline, everything we need to live a successful life. But if we're away from our purpose, and if we're trying to motivate ourselves with different methods, it just doesn't work on the long term. And the fifth is strategy, learning to ask ourselves powerful questions, learning to set goals, because only 2 to 3% of the world population right now and over history has been able to live an inspiring and amazing life where they reach all their goals. And when you ask why, because only 2 to 3% of the population sit down and work on their lives, set goals, ask them powerful questions, and truly work on their lives instead of working in their lives. And that's very important. That's my fifth principle. And every year I have a 5-day retreat where we sit down. It's an intense workshop because we start at 9 o'clock in the morning and finish at 9 o'clock at night. And I give my students hundreds of questions about their lives, and we cover all areas of life. We set goals, we ask powerful questions, we strategize, we plan, we make clear action plans, and then everything changes that year. They come back the second year telling, I've just reached all my goals. It's just, I've done it all. So planning before you do anything is very important. And because our lives are important, like if you don't want to waste your time, and if you want to live a meaningful life, you'd better start sitting down and planning all areas of your life, like relationships, what do you want, business, what do you want for your career, wealth, health, physical health, mental health, and start creating action plans, and then create calendars and all that stuff.
Nevşah, you've mentioned something when you were talking about your second principle that really caught my attention, because I know this is something that a lot of my clients are struggling with, and specifically it is the dysfunctional breathing habits. Could you perhaps tell us a little bit more about
Sure.
what are common dysfunctional breathing habits, and could you shed some light on that for us, please?
Yeah. So first of all, we all learn breathing habits, and breathing habits are behavioral habits, which is missed by many, even by breathwork teachers right now around the world. We are all breathing differently. We all learn different breathing habits due to our experiences in the world, how much exercise we do, what we eat, how much sleep we take, and all that, like our weight and our body shape and everything. And some of these breathing habits might be harmful. And some of these breathing habits might be on a day-to-day basis disaligning our respiratory chemistry and causing symptoms like hypocapnia and hypercapnia, which is low carbon dioxide levels and low oxygen levels, which does affect our health and well-being every day. And these are, like, even though they are well-known respiratory symptoms, they are not somehow remembered in the medical world, because when you go to a doctor with a migraine, the doctor doesn't, the first thing the doctor thinks isn't maybe you're in hypocapnia. They look at other stuff, like they can even think you have a brain tumor if you have headaches every day. But checking our breathing is the last thing a doctor would do. So it's kind of like, although the medical world do know about breathing habits and how breathing habits lead us into symptoms like hypocapnia, hypercapnia, and then create symptoms like headaches and migraine, attention deficit problems, ADD, ADHD, 99% of the time, especially in young generation, ADD and ADHD is because of a dysfunctional breathing habit. And we are leading all those teenagers to use prescriptive medicine, where we could just heal them by teaching them a better breathing habit, because ADD and ADHD gets triggered and gets perpetuated if you have a dysfunctional breathing habit. So any kind of attention problem you might have, if you have a dysfunctional breathing habit on top of it, because you won't have enough oxygen in the brain when you're breathing dysfunctional, it might be triggering ADD, ADHD, attention deficit, and learning problems, which is a huge problem right now in the young generation. Also, migraine, body pain, of course, as most people know, anxiety, panic attack, all kinds of symptoms from depression to bipolar symptoms can be triggered, worsened because of dysfunctional breathing habits. And because we all have different breathing habits, our breathing needs to be analyzed by basic behavioral science rules, which is just by asking questions, which is what we do on Breath Hub app. We just ask you simple questions about the symptoms, about your experiences, day-to-day experiences, and then we can understand how you're breathing. So simple behavioral science questions can help us understand how you're breathing, how well you're breathing, and what you're doing with your breathing habit. For example, if you have, during the day, if you're experiencing numbness in your hands or feet, you are probably overbreathing. If you are experiencing attention deficit problems, you're probably using your diaphragm too much. If you're experiencing low energy, you probably have a shallow breathing habit. So those are some examples of dysfunctional or of symptoms of dysfunctional breathing habits. But by looking at the symptoms, we know how you're breathing. And then we can suggest, as breathing scientists, we can suggest certain techniques for certain breathing habits. And some of the examples are like, there are people who are shallow breathers, there are people who are overbreathers, and shallow breathers usually experience hypercapnia. Shallow breathers, while shallow breathers experience hypercapnia, overbreathers experience hypocapnia, which is low carbon dioxide levels, and symptoms related with hypocapnia. Most people, and this is like the exact opposite of the well-known thing about breathing, most people are overbreathers. So right now you see a lot of articles and a lot of teachers speaking about breathing, telling, we're breathing shallow, we should breathe more in the diaphragm. But in reality, research shows that most people are overbreathers. It's the exact opposite. We are not shallow breathers, we are overbreathers.
And Nevşah, could you perhaps tell us the exact difference between shallow breathers and overbreathers? Because perhaps our audience doesn't really understand the difference between the two.
Sure. Overbreathers are breathing more than they should during the day, and they usually use the diaphragm more than they should have. And they're taking in a lot of oxygen, and due to that, there's a symptom called Bohr effect, where the blood stays saturated, but because of the pH difference in the body, because when we overbreathe and when we have too much alkaline, and when our carbon dioxide levels drop, our respiratory chemistry becomes too much alkaline, and our respiratory regulates body fluid pH. So the whole body fluid pH becomes too alkaline, and that's why the blood stays saturated and it doesn't deliver oxygen to the cells, and that is called the Bohr effect in respiratory science. And when that happens, we deprivate of oxygen, and there isn't enough oxygen in the cells, in the tissues, in the brain, so we start experiencing over 200 symptoms. And that is what overbreathing is. It's like using the diaphragm too much. When people are especially stressed, they take in deep breaths. If they take too much deep breaths, for example, they might go into hypocapnia. But as a behavioral habit, people overbreathe during the day without even noticing it. And that's the problem. It's like if you take deep breaths in when you're stressed, and if you're conscious of it, you can't go on, take deep breaths and faint. Because if you're doing it consciously, you stop. If you like take a few deep breaths and you're like, a bit in the clouds, you just stop. But if that's a behavioral habit, breathing deep, you might faint. And people do faint because they go into respiratory alkalosis without even knowing it. So that's why dysfunctional breathing habits are dangerous and harmful. And most people experience symptoms like anxiety, panic attack, or ADD, ADHD, learning disorders like I can't think well, headaches, or migraine, because they are not aware that they are breathing too deep. So it's deeply breathing during the day. And because our body needs a more balanced breathing habit. And shallow breathing is not breathing deep enough. Most people, some people, not most people, some people don't use the diaphragmatic muscles enough, and they do not breathe deep enough, and they are shallow breathers. So shallow breathing is not breathing deep enough.
Mm-hmm. Understood. And in that case, if someone is either an over breather or a shallow breather, would a very simple technique such as counting your inhales and exhales and regulating them by doing a count of 1, 2, and slowing down the exhale, is that going to be equally helpful for an overbreather as it would be for a shallow breather?
No.
Or do we need to adapt the tools depending on the person we're speaking with?
Yeah, we definitely need to adapt it. The reason being, you already said, some people are breathing shallow, some people deep, and there are actually other dysfunctional breathing habits as well. Like some people are, instead of using the diaphragm, they are using the muscles near to their chest, and they are performance breathers, or some people are just breathing in the chest, which we call reverse breathing habit. Or some people breathe in a very unbalanced way. Some people stop too much before the inhale. Some people pause too much before the inhale, pause too much before the exhale. Some people have a problem with the exhale, like they can't fully exhale, and they usually experience asthma symptoms. So there are like tens of different, like probably 20 to 23 different breathing habits, dysfunctional main breathing habits, and combination of their habits, of these habits, which is hundreds of different breathing habits. So that's why working with a breathing scientist or breath coach, or joining workshops or retreats where you will get some support on professional support on analyzing breath analysis and then dysfunctional breathing habits is very important. And when it comes to breathing techniques, the first thing to understand is every breathing technique doesn't fit all. And if one breathing technique does not calm and balance you and doesn't feel good, that is not the right technique for you. It's like, for example, if you're an overbreather, if I, for example, I don't check your breathing habit and I just lead you into a diaphragmatic breathing transformational breathwork session, you are going to hyperventilate and you're going to experience symptoms of hypocapnia immediately, and it's going to feel intense and horrible because you have a dysfunctional breathing habit of overbreathing. But if you are a shallow breather, a transformational breathing session where you are led into deep from the mouth diaphragmatic breathing will help you increase your breath, will help you balance the respiratory physiology, and you will feel great during the session. And you're like, this is what I needed. So because everyone has the ability to connect with themselves, and because everyone know what wellness is, like it's a balanced, calm feeling, if the breathing technique is just disaligning you from that ease, if it's creating a dis-ease, that's not the right technique for you. So it's like, that's the only thing I can tell people. Like, if you just try many techniques, and that's why, like on BreathHub app, we have over 800 sessions so that people can try different techniques. And I usually tell my students, like, go ahead, just try all those techniques. Start with one technique. If it doesn't feel right, just quit. Try another technique and find your own technique. If I'm with you, I would analyze your breathing and tell you, you should use this technique, that technique, and that technique. But if I'm not with you, you can just use your inner wisdom, because we know. It's kind of like you go to a place and you just don't feel, it just doesn't feel right, and you don't want to stay there. It's just that feeling. It's like, if it doesn't feel right for you, just stop. Don't practice that technique and find your own method. There is only one method, though, that works for everyone, which is coherent breathing, which I have over all breathing techniques, hundreds of breathing techniques, which still amazes me because it's so powerful, it's so simple, and it immediately balances the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, balances the right and the left lobes of the brain, and it just works amazing for everyone, which is coherent breathing, and which is connecting the inhale and exhale, breathing through the nose, in and out, inhaling and exhaling through the nose, and counting to 4 as you inhale and counting to 4 as you exhale, and concentrating on balancing the inhale and exhale. So shallow breathers, for example, can breathe deeper. Overbreathers can breathe shallower to balance it out. But in general, balancing the inhale and exhale, counting to 4 as you inhale, counting to 4 as you exhale, it just works magic. It's just amazing. So that's one technique I would suggest for everyone.
I love that you said that. And when I practice sport is also the technique that my coaches taught me. And when I was learning about breathing and become a breathwork coach in India, that was also one of the techniques we were taught in the ashram, which I find very, very powerful. I'm interested in your take about using that technique, but instead of a count of 4, making it a count of 5 so that each breath goes to 10 so that you take 6 breaths per minute, because that's also one technique that I was taught. And I really want your take on that. Do you still prefer the 4-second in, 4-second out? Do you like the 5 and 5? And is there reason for that? I want to pick your breath scientist brain.
Yeah. So it depends on, like, you can breathe in for 4, like breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, or do it like breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. So the number you're counting actually is not that important, but the rate of how you, like, we don't want people to breathe too fast. We don't want people to breathe too slow. And you can breathe too slow, and it's like I can just breathe. I can just count to 10 in 5 seconds, or I can count to 10 in 20 seconds. So that's like, of course,
Sure.
What you say is true, but there are like people who need a faster breath and a slower breath as well. So that's like what you said is in general, it's true, but some breathing habits need, because some people are slow breathers and their metabolisms are slow. They gain weight quickly and they can't move fast. They are just slow and they're just missing the fast lane of life, because like slow breathing leads to slow thinking. Like everything is slow. You move slow, metabolism slow, you gain weight, you're just slow and you miss the fast lane. So we usually lead those people to breathing a bit faster. But some people are fast on the fast lane. They breathe fast, they are slim, their metabolisms are fast. You know, it's like everything is fast. They think fast and they need to slow down. So it's like when you look at breathing, I mean, when breathing is done as a respiratory reflex, it's perfect. Like when our body breathes by itself without us interfering with it, that's perfect. But breathing habits are learned habits that are interfering with our body's already existing knowledge. So if we didn't have any dysfunctional breathing habits, which is the ultimate goal, and when my students, for example, work on their breathing and they are breathing more functional, there's one thing they don't do, which is manipulate their breathing anymore. So what a functional breathing is, or how a functional breathing looks like, is me not interfering with my breath and letting my body do its job. Because when you look at breath is actually led by the brain and the brain's reflexes. There are reflexes in the brain, and the brain gathers all the information from the body, because respiration regulates our body fluid pH. It's very important, and it regulates many other stuff. So the brain gets all the data, millions of data from everywhere in the body, like blood, tissues, brain, heart, and then brain leads the respiratory reflexes, and it keeps our breath shallow or deep or whatever, at a level where at whatever level our body needs. But when we have a dysfunctional breathing habit and we take control of our breath and we, without even noticing, take control of our breath and manipulate and change our breath, that creates a lot of symptoms. And I can give an example, like for the listeners to really understand. For example, if I'm practicing professional sports, for example, I'm in a tennis match and playing like hardcore, it's obvious that my body will produce a lot of lactic acid. And it's acid. And that's why people, when they're doing professional sports, they breathe deeper. And I will tend to breathe deeper and deeper because my body respiratory reflexes kick in. So the brain gathers all the information from the body and says, hey, the body has too much acidity. If I don't take care of it, this guy might die, because people might die from acidity. And immediately, because respiration regulates the body fluid pH, immediately sends signals to the diaphragm and says, breathe deeper, so that we can go alkaline and compensate that acidity. And that's why we tend to breathe deep during sports. Like we need that deep breath. We're like, professional sports, you're like breathing deeper and deeper and faster. And that's a respiratory reflex. And that's what we need. Like deep breath is very much needed during physical exercise to compensate the acid in the body. So imagine you're not doing sports. You're just sitting at the office and you don't have that acid in the body. Your respiratory chemistry, your body fluid chemistry is stable, and you start breathing deep. Then what's going to happen is you're going to go into alkaline because there is no acidity to compensate, but you're just breathing deep just to breathe deep. That's not a reflex. Your body doesn't need it, and that causes problem. Or the opposite. For example, you're doing sports, professional sports, and you're a shallow breather, and your body reflexes kick in, and the reflexes tell you like breathe more in the diaphragm, and you take control of your breathing and you just don't because you have a dysfunctional breathing habit. What's going to happen is you're going to probably have to stop, or you might faint because of acidity, because you need a deep breath to compensate that acid, and you couldn't take those deep breaths because you're a shallow breather. That causes another problem. So it's like if our breath is led by the brain, that is perfect, but we have a problem. We learned to manipulate and change our breathing when we were kids. And then those changing our breathing habits became behavioral habits. And right now, many people are changing their breath, taking control of their breath without even noticing it and experiencing over 200 symptoms. So that's what we're after. Like, that's what we're trying to change. Like, for people to let go, for people to trust the body, for people to just learn to trust the body for their breathing.
Of course. Now, Nevşah, what comes to my mind right now is how do you feel as a breathing scientist about, say, a general app that would give some general recommendation? So I'm thinking about a lot of my clients that like to fall asleep to some recording that will guide you through taking some slower or deeper belly breath, for example, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth, putting your hands on your belly. But those are very general advices. And of course, they're not bespoke or tailored to the person listening. They're sort of universal recording. How do you feel about those?
What I can say is it works until it works, or it works until it doesn't. So it's like and the thing with breathing is, which is interesting is, my answer should be actually, I trust the process, because with breathing, the thing is, like I said a couple of minutes ago, if it doesn't feel good, just quit. It's like if a breathing technique, if you can't sleep and a breathing technique helps you to sleep, that means you needed that breathing at that moment in your life. Because when you look at
Got it.
Because when you look at, for example, what's happening with our breath while we're falling asleep, our breath gets shallow and we let go of the diaphragm. We relax the exhale. I'll like fully relax the exhale. We take shallow breaths, and when we let go of our control of our breath. So, for example, if you have a dysfunctional breathing habit and you're an overbreather, you did overbreathe throughout the whole day, you came home, you're still overbreathing, and you're just in this high energy. You still have the energy and you just can't relax because your breath can't calm down. You can't shallow down the breath. You just can't do it by yourself. Listening to a technique which will shallow down the breath, slow down the breath, will help you get the result you want, which is relaxing and falling to sleep. And that's okay, and that's great. We also have some sessions like that on the app, but it is not going to help you to change your breathing habit for sure. It is kind of like getting a prescriptive medicine. You don't go deep enough to the core of the problem, which is you overbreathing and not being able to relax the breath. If you could do it by yourself, while just, close your eyes, and if you could let go of the exhale by yourself, that would be the ultimate solution, because that would mean you wouldn't have any breathing habits. So in the end, analyzing breathing habits, going on a customized journey, and changing your breathing behavior is the best thing you can do for yourself, because you will, by changing those behaviors, you will start healing most of the symptoms you experience because of that. You will start, for example, without any technique, you will start sleeping better, and you will be able to sleep.
And in your expert opinion, Nevşah, how long does it take for one to go from having dysfunctional breathing habits to go into functional breathing habits?
Between 5 to 10 sessions, I would say. That's why I lead retreats of 5 days with 10 sessions, because most people need between 5 to 10 sessions. These sessions can be, private, with a retreat, in a workshop. So yeah, some people have less breathing habits, or some people have less harmful breathing habits. Some people have more. As you know, some people have more symptoms, more issues. Some people have less issues. So it depends on the individual, but I would say between 5 to 10 breathing sessions.
One thing that you said that really caught my attention was when you mentioned living in the fast lane. Now, a lot of my clients are in that fast lane, but sometimes so much so that they're driving a bit too fast on that fast lane. What I mean by that is overachievers, overdoers, constantly whack, 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 very little recovery, doing a ton, and sometimes chasing their tail or feeling like a bit of a hamster in a wheel because they're doing so much. And what happens is they're navigating chronic anxiety, they can navigate a lot of anger, struggle with day-to-day emotional management. What would you say typically, and I appreciate this is a bit of an archetype, right? We don't have a specific person in mind, but what would you say is this person, this fast lane prone, burnout prone professional going to have as dysfunctional breathing habit, most likely?
100% overbreathing. because overperforming, and even the word overachievers, like over whatever you're overdoing, like an overdoer does overdo the breath as well. So it's like, that's a mindset. It's like fast, overdoing, overachieving, of course, overbreathing, like 100%. And if we check their breathing habits, 99% of them, if not all, we would see that they have overbreathing habits, because people who want to achieve more and who are overachievers and overdoers eventually find a way to use their breathing to overachieve and overdo as well. Because overachieving and to overachieve and overdo, we need extra energy. And where we can get that extra energy from is by our breath. So overdoers and overachievers definitely breathe more than a lot of people during the day. But because they breathe deeper, because they breathe deeper, they can overachieve and they can overwork and all of that. But that breathing habit keeps them a bit hypocapnic during the day, which is low carbon dioxide levels, which is the reason why they feel anxious and they are hyper and they have hyperactivity and they just can't calm down. And that's why those people need alcohol, for example, at night to calm down, or pills or prescribed medicine to calm down. Because if you overbreathe, you have all that energy and you're like hyper, but because of the Bohr effect, you don't have enough actually oxygen in the body, and there's a deprivation that leads to anxiety and that tenseness in the body. And what happens in the end is, at the end of the day, at the end of the month, if they don't take time off and if they don't learn to calm down their breath, I'm not saying that overachieving is good or bad. It's like there are times in my life still where I am aware that I am breathing more than I should during that day. Because, for example, I have 5 meetings on top of each other because I have 4 different companies I'm leading on top of the graduate school and all that. Like I wouldn't call myself an overachiever or overdoer, but I'm like doing a lot of stuff at the same time. And there are some days like I have 5 meetings on top of each other, and I'm aware that I need that over breath to, overbreathe. But at night when I come home, I'm like, I plug off. I'm like, don't even talk to me for the next half an hour or 1 hour. And I literally, because I'm more conscious of my breath, I let go and I just tune in. I literally feel like I don't even breathe. Like it's so shallow. It gets so shallow to balance it out. And that's a healthy breathing. It's like during the day, if you overbreathe, the only thing that can balance that overbreathing is just totally letting go. Meditation, not doing the breath at all, not breathing at all. So I literally spend like an hour just being with myself, doing nothing, absolutely nothing to balance it out. If you don't balance
And are
it
you
out,
talking about
when you overbreathe, it's like if you keep on overbreathing and overdoing, and if you don't retreat at all, if you don't stop, relax, do things like meditation, not doing anything, massage or whatever, you're going to either experience burnout symptoms, or have like anxiety, panic attack, or muscle problems. Like MS is also perpetuated by dysfunctional breathing habits of overbreathing. So it's like in the end of the day, at the end of the month or year, you're going to be damaging your overall health and well-being. So for overbreathers and overdoers, I think it's very important for them to, why the question I have, by the way, researched on this and worked on this specific topic for years. The reason why people overdo, overbreathe, and want to overachieve is because they are conditioned in their minds about some things. It's like they are conditioned on what success is, and that conditioning is not aligned with their truth. Because in reality, if you're aligned with your purpose, like when you look at people who live life aligned with their purpose, who are aligned with their values and true priorities, they do not have the need to do more or achieve more, because they are already expressing themselves and they're already aligned with their purpose. So overdoing, I know that overdoing and overachieving is all about the conditioning in the mind. And I would suggest people to think it this way. When you overdo and overachieve and overdo things, you are going to lose most of the stuff you created, because only businesses or whatever you create, books or um, relationships you create from a purposeful and meaningful place will last. The rest won't last. That's why I tend to lead my students to working with their minds as well, not only with breath, but also we do a lot of mind work, and I help them understand their purpose, who they are, what their values are, because unless we are fully aligned with our purpose and with our authentic selves, we tend to overdo things, and we tend to create things that we're gonna be losing in the future, because only purposeful actions create lasting results. And that's like, if you ask me what would be your one message to the world, I would probably say that, like, only actions from a purposeful and meaningful point of view will last. So with those overdoing, like what they're creating, they're going to lose it anyway. Like, why are you overdoing? Like, you're creating stuff you're going to lose anyway. It's really interesting.
Could you it is. And I can attest to the fact that having had a major burnout episode, one of the things that healed me most was coherent breathing, actually, of all the techniques and the techniques that I learned in the ashram and practicing it multiple times a day, which I found excruciating because I was definitely an overbreather. I fit into this category. So one thing that I would love to ask your expert advice on, and I appreciate again all the different bespoke adjustments that need to be done and analysis, but do you think you could take us through one breathwork practice that
Sure.
you would recommend for overbreathers that would be really, really powerful?
Yeah, definitely box breathing. Yeah.
Box breathing?
Yeah, box breathing, which is, again, 4 or 5. You can use 4 or 5, breathing in, counting to 4, pause, 4, and then exhaling, counting to 4, and then again pause, 4. Because overbreathers do not pause much before the inhale and exhale, and they breathe too deep. So
well, they do not pause much at all.
So shallowing it down, and pausing before the inhale and exhale is kind of like the answer to just stopping.
I really appreciate that you shared that. And it's a technique that's been used by Navy SEALs as well. It's a very powerful technique, box breathing. So I'm glad that you pointed that out.
Just to stop and dive in. And the next thing I would suggest is, I think this is even more important, classic Vedic way of meditation, which is learning to meditate the classic way. I have been meditating for over 20 years now, and I'm a classic Vedic meditation teacher. And I don't know if you know well, but there are not many classic Vedic meditations in the world, meditation teachers in the world, because it's so deep, it's intense, but it's the most powerful journey. Like, if you learn to stop daily in the meditate 20 minutes, minimum 20 minutes in the morning, minimum 20 minutes in the afternoon, that's going to change everything, especially for overbreathers. I think that's what they need. Like, I have worked with a lot of celebrities, especially in the Turkish film industry, like main celebrities who are burned out and who had sleeping apnea and all kinds of overbreathing habits, symptoms. And I taught classic meditation to most of them. And once they learned to meditate daily in the morning and in the evening, everything started shifting. Like, their energy, their symptoms were gone, because they work a lot. It's like they spend a week with 3 hours of sleep or something. Sometimes it's like it's intense. I think actors and actresses, like at one point in their lives, need to overbreathe to just keep themselves up, and alive. But then learning to just retreat and learning to meditate and dive deep and just letting go, I think that's like the best thing they can learn.
Could you tell our audience, perhaps during this classic meditation phase of 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening, how do they breathe?
Well, in meditation, we don't actually pay a lot of attention to our breath, but I think getting ready for the meditation is very important. So taking 3 deep breaths in from the nose to the diaphragm and then to the chest, and just pausing for a couple of seconds and then letting go, like 2 or 3 breaths to get ready for the meditation. And then we use a mantra, which is called Aham, Aham, in classic Vedic meditation, which is actually the vibration of I am, and it connects us deeply to our being, and it roots us to our being. And the way we do that meditation is we close our eyes, take a couple of deep breaths, tune in, and start thinking of Aham in our minds very softly, and then Aham just fades away, and you just start maybe thinking. The main when you look at meditation, real meditation is all about effortlessness. So it's all about not having an effort, like not trying to change anything, like just letting the thoughts and letting the emotions, because once you let that happen, once you are effortless, and once you allow the thoughts and the emotions and whatever happening, the body relaxes and the mind relaxes. The mind needs space to relax its stress. So when you don't try to change anything in the mind, and by using Aham at the back of your mind, the mind lets go and relaxes, and in minimum 20, you need minimum 20 minutes. What happens in 20 minutes is, there are researches about this, but the blood and oxygen rushes to the prefrontal cortex, and then your whole body and your mind relaxes, and you connect with the executive mind, and that stays around 8 to 9 hours. So that's why we suggest our students to practice one meditation in the morning, one meditation session in the afternoon, so that they can keep their prefrontal cortex activated, because that's the executive mind, which I've been speaking about. Unless you govern the mind, you can't govern your life. And when you learn to govern the mind by practicing classic Vedic meditation and learning it in depth, of course, it's not like meditation is not as simple as people think. People think I just tell you a method and you do it. It's not that simple. It's like there are layers and layers and layers. I'm still teaching my meditation students after 5 years, after 6 years. There are still things they are learning. It's an ongoing learning process, which is probably very different from what people think it is.
Of course. And Nevşah, just to wrap it up, I have one last question, because you mentioned this 20 minutes twice a day, which I know is ideal, but just to keep it realistic, perhaps for a very time-pressed listener, if they were to implement your strategies, but they wanted to do it in the most time-constrained manner, is there any benefit, in your expert opinion, to take 1 minute to have a bit of a calmer breath, or to be more aware of your breath? If you can't afford 20 minutes, what is the minimum effective dose, in your opinion?
I mean, I would again reply 20 minutes. And the reason being that 20 minutes, I think I'm going to say something really revolutionary here, but those 20 minutes will affect the next 8-9 hours of your day. And you will be able to, just by relaxing the mind and just by connecting and tuning in, with your mind, and relaxing the stress in the mind and getting clear about that day and who you are that day and what needs to be done that day, you will probably so it's like, I'm going to give an example. So imagine someone who doesn't meditate in the morning and just closes their eyes for 1 minute and then rushes into the world. So what they're going to do is they're going to probably do 10 things during the day and get one result. People who meditate are experiencing life differently. So like my life is different. Like I said, I'm leading, 5 companies, and on top there is the graduate school and the Breath Coaching Federation, and most people think I work a lot or I work hard, but I work wise. Because I'm meditating every day, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon. So I don't do those 10 tasks people do without consciousness. I meditate in the morning and find the 1, 2, or 3 tasks I can do to get those results, because those answers are in my mind. So when the mind gets clear, you get clear on the main actions that will take you to your goal, to the results. And that's why people who meditate live life wiser. So I don't do 10 things a day. I do 3 things, but get better results than most people who do 10 things. And that's what 20 minutes is about. So you do 20 minutes, but you gain hours of your life.
I love that. Thank you so much. That's a good ROI. Definitely. Nevşah, I'm hugely grateful for this time with you. I've learned a lot. And I'm
Me too. I enjoyed every minute.
I'm glad. Thank you so much. And I'll be sure to add all your wonderful resources to the show notes so that our audience can connect with you. Is there one way in particular you would prefer for them to connect with you after this episode?
Yeah, they can send me emails. My email is very simple. It's on my name, nevşah@nevşah.com. So very simple.
As simple as it gets. You see, that's what you get when you do 40 minutes of meditation a day. You come up with those great ideas.
That's all. Thank you.
I love it.
Me too.
I'm very grateful. I wish you a beautiful night, and thank you very much, Nevşah.
Thank you too.
Now that you've learned about the extraordinary power of breathwork to optimize your personal well-being and boost your professional performance, I have a gift for you. Download your breathwork ebook by following the show notes so that you can start your personal breathing journey guided by me.